Hey guys, welcome back to the Caitlin Carter podcast. I'm Sala Valagnota.
I'm Tiffany Johnson.
I'm Abby Mondi.
I'm Lila Kasakis.
And today's episode, we decided to talk about Women's History Month because this month is March. So I believe it's important we learn history, otherwise we are doomed to repeat it. And whether you believe in that life philosophy or not, it's important to recognize the achievements and strength from a marginalized community to grow as people and grow as society. So March is Women's History Month, and to those who aren't familiar with it, the Women's History Month website describes this month as a celebration to the contributions women have made to the United States and recognize the specific achievements women have made over the course of American history in a variety of fields. I have a lot of idols or women I look up to, and I guess I first learned about it in 8th grade when we learned about women's suffrage, like when they talked about Alice Paul and the strength it took to do stuff like that. And through learning about this, I started reflecting on people in my life that I also look at, women in my life that I also look up to. So who are those for you guys?
Well, some people that I admire are, of course, my mom. My mom lived in Peru for all of her life until she turned 22, and she was brought over to the United States by my aunt. And it was really hard for her, especially just leaving all of her family. She had to learn English. She didn't know any English at all. And she also lived with some people who didn't treat her the best. So that was definitely hard, being homesick and everything. So I look up to her so much because she's just so strong, and I want to be like her when I'm older. Other women that I look up to are Audrey Hepburn because she played in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and I'll always have a special place in my heart because my name's Tiffany, and because when I was little, people would be like, "Oh my God, you kind of look like Audrey Hepburn," and I was like, "What a compliment, man!" And she's beautiful, she's talented, and she has the amazing outfits, and she's just a style icon. Then I also, when I was little, looked up to Zendaya so much. She sang, she danced, she acted, and I did all those things when I was younger, and I just really admire her, and I still do to this day, her talent and just how amazing she is. And then I also look up to Alicia Keys because I play piano, and I played the piano for a while, and she's just kind of like a modern day just pianist, and I just love listening to her music, hearing her play, hearing her live performances. It's pretty cool, and I even have a picture over my piano of her lyrics to If I Ain't Got You. So
I look up to Emma Chamberlain. She's a YouTuber, and she is always so freely talking about her mental health, and I think it has made it more of a common topic because she's so influential on this younger generation. She has had such a big impact through fashion, the way people make jokes, and has inspired a lot of young women to start YouTube channels and document their lives. Another YouTuber that I look up to is Colleen Ballinger. I've always looked up to her. She used to be known as Miranda Sings and is still known as Miranda Sings, but she also has her own vlog channel. When she was a young adult and was making Miranda Sings videos, they were all such funny, silly videos where she'd dance and sing and be weird. And as a little kid, I always looked up to her just being freely weird. She always just did whatever she wanted, and I thought that was really cool. And I admire her now because she's a mom of 3, and she's always very real about her struggles and never makes up unattainable standards for moms like many other YouTubers do. And lastly, I, of course, admire my mom, my grandma, and my nanny, too. They were all such inspirational women to grow up with. My mom taught me to be kind to everyone and has always taught me to be respectful. My grandma gave me love to help others and volunteer. She would always bring me to volunteer with her, and I always saw her doing charitable work. And lastly, I admire my nanny in her younger days. She was a businesswoman and worked in a time where it was weird for many women to work because she had my mom at such an old age that it was weird for women to work at that time. And I always admired her hardworkingness and that mentality she had.
All right, Lila.
First, I admire Dolly Parton because, first, she's just really cool. And according to Yardbarker, she's a philanthropist. So she has many different organizations that she started, like the Dollywood Foundation, and she's given $500 scholarships to every high school student in her county. And she has this thing called the Imagination Library where she mails books to young children from when they're born to when they start school, and they get a book a month. And I think that's very cool. And she has sanctuaries and scholarships and all this. She's a very charitable person who influenced a lot of people with her music too, because she's not just a philanthropist, you know? So that is Dolly Parton, and Devin Lee Carlson is my number one fashion icon of all time, and she is a businesswoman too, who started a business very early and used social media as a way to develop her brand, and just really inspires me because of her business, and she's influencing people in many ways. Oh, and my mom. My mom inspires me in many ways because she taught me everything I know today.
I also admire my mom, like everyone here is talking about. And like Tiffany's mom, she went through the same situation with being an immigrant. She came to America from the Philippines in hopes for a better future, for a better life for her, her family, and her future kids. And she was and still is so strong and independent, and went through discrimination and oppression as not only a Filipino immigrant, but also as a woman. And constantly being undermined and mocked and simply discriminated against were all due to her identity in both marginalized communities. However, her guiding me to become a better person and me seeing her as a role model is not only a Filipino, not only a woman, but as a strong, independent person that I want to strive to also become. And another woman who is a Filipino and a woman is Olivia Rodrigo, who is a singer-songwriter and very popular in today's day and age. And growing up, I felt really underrepresented in media because I'm Filipino and because that representation, that ethnic representation isn't really shown in any sort of movies or music. But seeing her grow and seeing her popularity in the people I'm involved with is so impactful because she's made a difference in the music industry. And I think the idea of being in both marginalized communities as an ethnic minority and as a woman and facing both those parts of discrimination are something I really admire and that you look up to. And I know there are other women out there who also impact others by being that as well.
Yeah, I definitely think I can agree with this a lot because Selena, she's been such an inspiration to me. Growing up, in the Hispanic household, of course, I've heard of Selena. And when I saw her for the first time, I was just like, oh my gosh, she's such an icon. And I love to sing and dance and stuff, so I looked up to her a lot. And she also reminds me of my grandma. My grandma's also an inspiration to me. She's super loving and caring and loves to just help other people. And a song that we love to dance to is Como la Flor. And it just, every time I see her dancing on TV, we watch all of her documentaries and stuff. It just reminds me how much of a big influence she was on the Hispanic community because she influenced so many people at such a young age. And to this day, people still listen to her music, people still buy her merchandise, and it's just crazy how much of an impact she had on the Hispanic community, and not just the Hispanic community, but also just other people, because my dad, he's not Peruvian, he's not Hispanic or anything.
He's not a woman.
He's not a woman either, and he still knew who Selena was. He listened to her songs before he even met my mom, so it just shows how much of an impact and how much of a great woman she was.
Yeah, and I think these people that we've talked about and these influencers in our life are not only these amazing people, but they're also women that we can look up to. And as a marginalized community that we are, we kind of see the strength and the empowerment in that. And so with us today is the Kaylin Crier design executive, Anna Olf, who we wanted to talk about, obviously Women's History Month, but also her role in the Crier as a woman and as a girl in life. So what I was actually thinking about as we were talking about this is obviously you're a woman in journalism, and I was wondering if being a girl in certain fields of education, certain careers, because I know you're graduating this year, has being a girl ever impacted your career choice or anything related to journalism?
So I think, as people, the way we perceive each other can be based on so many different variables, and gender is definitely one of them. So being a girl, you never quite know if that's going to affect how somebody sees you. So while personally it hasn't necessarily set me back, there are many, many women who are considered for positions and job opportunities and are not chosen over men. And so while it is awesome to be able to consider journalism as a career in the future, it's always nerve-wracking to think that that could happen to you as well. And it's absolutely insane that that is still a possibility that we have to face going into 2022. I mean, by now you'd think that everyone would want equal opportunities for girls, guys, and everybody else. It's unfortunate that we still have to talk about discrimination based on sex.
After what Anna said, I was thinking about the workplace a lot, and March 15th is Equal Pay Day, and according to shrm.org, Better Workplaces, Better World, they are saying that going into 2022, women earn 82 cents for every $1 men earn when comparing all women to men. So I think that that is, of course, very bad. And then throughout the article, they talk about how the pandemic has slowed down the equal pay. And I think that really goes into like a man being chosen over a woman just because of how people perceive you, you know, and I think it's just so wrong.
So going off of what Abby said, like in the workspace, like I feel like women are often taken advantage of, and that can reflect onto their pay or onto the position that they get. It's so horrible how women are just put into those positions just because of their sex.
And what you were saying about the equal pay, in class recently, we were talking about that, and my male teacher said that equal pay exists and that it's not something we have to worry about anymore and that it's not something that's going on. And I think this not only reflects on the education that many people are given, but also that I'm being told as a woman by a male teacher that equal pay does exist and that I'm not educated on it when I'm also not being properly educated on women's history and Women's History Month. And like I said earlier, I was learning about women's history in 8th grade when we're talking about women's rights and women's suffrage and Alice Paul, and it felt different to learn because it wasn't just these word-for-word facts. My teacher was telling me how important it is to recognize these strong people in history and these strong women in history.
I definitely think that those topics in school, when it resonates with you and it kind of shows you the path that women have taken to get you where you are today, resonates a lot. Like you said, it didn't feel just like reading facts off of paper. It felt like we were learning about those who came before us. And it is unfortunate that we don't hear more about this in history. A lot of history textbooks in most United States schools are filled with white men. And unfortunately, a lot of the side of history that women were involved in is covered, but not as much, or it's not stressed upon where it should be.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, when I was learning about, like, women history and everything, I always, like, it really made you think, like, I could be living a completely different life if, like, these women, these, like, empowering women just didn't step up and do something about it. But also, learning about it in school was, like, just one small little thing. I barely remember a lot from the women's history, I guess you could say, unit that we were doing, because we didn't really spend a ton of time on it, and no one really talked about it that much afterward. I feel like there's so many topics in schools where we talk about them so much and we cover them so much to the point where it's like learned about it a million times.
It's so sad that the women's part is considered a unit.
Exactly.
But it can't. All history can't be women's history too.
That's it's exactly
the male washing of whole history. Like, whose fault is that?
Yeah.
And we're having to learn that. We're having to consume that, and younger generations are still going to have to consume that because no one's putting in the effort to change what we're learning and put in that effort.
People are like, they're scared of the truth. In so many history books, like at the beginning of the year, you know, we were learning about the Revolutionary War and like women's part in that, and it's so slim. And of course, like with slavery too, like women were so terribly treated, and you only hear a snippet of it because it's too much for kids to handle, when in reality, if they learned more about it, if it was more normalized, and like Anna said, if women's history was all history, then we wouldn't be necessarily, I think, like in this place today where women are still facing this pay and everything just because of all outside opinions.
And that goes into like it's inappropriate for children to learn about, whatever. But I don't want to be rude or anything. Like, I always found the Holocaust very emotional, but like I also like to learn about it because it was like some really big part of history. But to say that learning about women's history is scary and children shouldn't be learning about that goes far enough to say, like, then why are we learning about the Holocaust? Because that is horrible, and why can't we learn about both? Because people, like, lots of people died, and there was lots of just stories. Like, from 5th grade I was learning about the Holocaust, and like I never really learned about women's history. And I think it's just going farther than like the whole, oh, children, it's inappropriate for them. I think it's just people being selfish. Like, they don't want to give up that piece of, like, I want to continue this path of how they did everything. They were the ones who put in all this work to shape our country how it is. But there was so much more that happens that we just don't learn about and don't know.
I completely agree. Like, and not even comparing to huge parts of history, but just we don't discuss women's history as much as we do so many other things. And why do we learn about those things? We learn to understand our history, understand where we came from, understand these people around us, and grow as society. So why are we still withholding learning about women's history in that part of education? And why are there still people trying to, like, why are there still debates in class about equal pay? We should know that stuff already, you know? That shouldn't be a debatable discussion. It should be something we learned already.
Yeah, as a society, we're just widely uneducated, and I think that's just the biggest problem, is that everybody doesn't actually know the truth, and they want to fight, but you can't fight without knowing your, like, true facts.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, you heard our influencers in life, so who are yours, Anna?
Okay, so some of the people that come to mind when I think of important women that I look up to, first off, rest in peace, is Betty White. I loved Betty White. I always look forward to seeing her face on TV or anywhere, really. She was such a popular woman who everyone loved. And it's awesome to see also someone as a woman succeed for so long into old age. A lot of actors and actresses' careers end when they get older because, along with stigmatism against women, there's also a lot of ageism, stigmatism, especially in the world of Hollywood. Another woman who definitely made a name for herself in history was Princess Diana, the People's Princess. Her death was something that really affected so many people, and the amount of people who were grieving after she passed away showed just how big of an impact she had on not only Britain but the rest of the world. And another woman who is an amazing athlete and role model is Chloe Kim. As the Beijing Olympics just passed, which she competed in, it's awesome to see women representation in male-dominated sports. Chloe Kim snowboarded, she did the half pipe, and sports is another one of those professions where men get paid immensely more than women, and this is something that just a resolution is unfortunately doesn't look like it's in the near future, which is so unfortunate. And like you said earlier, Abby, that it's just uneducation. Many people aren't even aware of how big the wage gap is between male professional sports and female. And to see women go the extra length and being able to succeed as an athlete and have equal opportunity to compete in the Olympics as men is fantastic.
Okay, I too love Chloe Kim because she's a huge inspiration to me as a woman in sports. And she's had a huge impact on sports for women as we know it. And Women's History means a lot to me because it's a month for us to be appreciated when sometimes we are underappreciated in many things that we do and different areas of life. And I just think it's great that we have a whole month to celebrate this.
I think that the impact of Women's History Month is like just a good recognition of the many years of oppression and neglect that women were faced with. It really gives us that reminder of those women just overcoming, and to this day, women overcoming the struggles and the oppression that they go through. I also think that society has really formed these stereotypes and these things that women should follow just because they are a woman. And I'm glad that over the years we've been getting better at ending it. But I think that Women's History Month is always great for everyone to remember what had happened and what's still happening. And because Women's History Month is not talked about a ton in schools, I also think it's a great way for people to educate themselves on the history that has happened with women.
Yes, I think it's good for us to educate ourselves on things that happen, and we can focus on issues that we need to work on.
I also agree with everything you said, especially with Tiffany saying that she is thankful that we've made such progress. And I can't say this enough. I'm so thankful to have lived in a time where things have made so much progress, and I think it's so good that we can do so many things like work and vote and everything, and I'm just very grateful for that. I think that Women's History Month has had such an impact on me from such a young age. I remember hearing about it for the first time on Disney Channel, because they always did these commercials where they talk about inspirational women, and I loved learning about them. And even now, Disney Channel does such a good job about being inclusive and teaching kids about women at a young age to make the conversation less of something that's scary and more something that should be appreciated. On the Disney Channel official YouTube, they have many videos that are dedicated to women this month, and they have one video that's titled Women's History Month, Female Power, Marvel, Disney. And I think that, especially in their movies, being able to show that inclusivity of women and show them as these big power roles, especially with a video like that, is so important to younger kids.
I definitely think Women's History Month is also great for the reminder that us as women, not just for people who don't have much education on it, to really just appreciate how far we've come and just our rights and everything. Because I feel like girls and women and everything, they just kind of sometimes can overlook the fact that there's so much that was
The privileges.
just privileges that were given to us because of these great role models who stepped up and did something about it. And so I think it's a great reminder for people who might be taking advantage of that and everything like that. So
Learning of the empowerment and growth from any oppressed community is valuable to everyone, from young kids looking up to them to adults who grow up uneducated and unaware of events and impacts in history. We learn to be appreciative of those around us and grow strength in ourselves and peers. Learning and understanding occasions like Women's History Month help us grow society, and recognizing the importance of this month progresses us into a more kind, inclusive, educated, and understanding society. So, thank you, Anna, for being with us today. And our sources from today's podcast include womenshistorymonth.gov,
shrm.org, and disney.com YouTube.
And yardbarker.com.